Welcome to Money Mondays with Christy Lambert. I'm so excited that you've joined me here today for part 2 of the question, how do you ask for money? So last week we talked about what was holding you back from asking for money, some tools to get really clear so that you can face those fears head on, and we talked about getting clear on value and expectation. This week I want to give you a more tactical outline so you have a clear idea of what you should say when it comes time to make that ask. Now I will tell you, if you haven't done the work from last week, no matter what I tell you today, it's going to be uncomfortable. So I want you to go back and do that work if you haven't already, and then integrate these tools we're going to talk about today. So I like to think about asking for money in a really strategic way. The first thing that you're going to want to do, if you haven't just already done it, is summarize your value proposition. You want to keep this simple. You want to think about 3 ways that you most bring value to the organization or to the customer or to the client. Summarize that as clearly as possible, and then check in with the participant on the other side that you're asking for money from and see if they buy into your value proposition, right? We want to check in before we even make the ask. So if you're asking for a raise, it might sound something like, this is the value I bring to the organization. Do you agree? They'll say yes or no. And if they say no, you know it's not time to make the ask, right? You still have more work to do. But if they say yes, you have the green light, the go ahead. Same thing when it comes to working with a customer or a client. If you own a business, you might have made your value proposition, and then you could simply ask, is this something you might be interested in? If they say no, again, stop, don't make the ask, and then if they say yes, you know you have that green light to give you confidence going into the ask. So now you're ready to make the ask, and this is really, really important. You're gonna wanna be clear, specific, and take the emotion out of it. Stick to the facts. The emotion and the passion should really shine through when you're making your value proposition, but when it comes time for the actual ask, you just want to stick to the facts. So it might sound something like, I'm asking for a 5% raise based on the value I bring. Really clear, right? Clear, simple, concise. Now, if you want to add a little bit more to this, the biggest tip that I can recommend here is giving the person you're asking for money from a choice. So you might say something like, I'd like a 5% raise based on the value I bring to the organization, or a 3% raise and an additional week of vacation. What works best for you? That way they can be a part of the discussion as well. Same thing on the other end when you're talking about asking a client for money. You might say something like, I offer a 6-week course for $450 and one-on-one sessions for $150. But keep it simple, right? Don't try to add in a lot of extra stuff and fluff here. You want to just give them the facts. Tell them what you're asking for. And then this is going to be the single most important thing. Stop. Don't say anything else. Let them process the request you've made and let them share with you their thoughts before you add any additional information. What happens here a lot of times is that people start to get uncomfortable because there will be silence, right? They're thinking you've just made a request and they're processing that information. And the truth is, you have no idea what they're thinking. But because there's silence, what happens is people start to water down the request. They might say, well, I could do a 2% raise, or maybe I don't need that extra week of vacation if we do 3%, right? They start to panic, they start to water it down. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to just sit still and let them come up with a response. If you feel like you absolutely have to say something, you can't just sit there, you might say something like, what are your thoughts, right? But let them tell you your thoughts before you add any more information to the request. So to summarize how you're going to ask for money tactically, you're going to give them your value proposition, top 3 things. You're going to check in, make sure they're on the same page and they agree with the value statement that you've just presented. And then you're going to make the request, take the emotion out of it, stick to the facts, give them a choice if you want, and then you're going to stop. You're going to let them tell you yes or no or maybe. So I hope that helps. What I want you guys to do this week is I want you to actually try this. I want you to practice. That means actually saying it out loud. Now I know you might not be ready to ask your boss for a raise, or you might not have any client presentations where you're ready to make the actual ask, but that doesn't mean you can't practice. You can say this out loud to your kid, to your partner, to some friends, but make sure you say it out loud to another person, because that's going to feel a lot different than just practicing it in your head. Once you've done that, I want you to report back in the comments section below with how that went for you and what you've learned from this process of practicing the ask at a tactical level. And then email me, christy.lambert@areyouthriving.com with your money questions, and you might be featured on another edition of Money Mondays. Thanks for joining me.